good thing running a business to have a passion for this.
You don't like this stuff? Well, thanks for coming on,
It's
Bob.
not that I don't like it. I would never want to put it together.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like, there's a lot of...
Moving parts.
Yeah, I don't work well with the schedule. That's why Chris and I work well together.
Well, really the schedule is just finding people to come on and get out. But put it this way, I've shot content for 4 years, and most of it was just from my iPhone. And it's very hard to put stuff together all the time consistently because then you just forget. So like
100%.
having a dedicated space where I come here, have a conversation, I know how to record it, and then we just film and edit it. It's good.
Yeah, but you have to be into it to want to put this together.
Yeah. Part of this, though, too, Bob, is like I want to get to know you as a person, and it's cool to have business contacts where we both know each other and we can make connections that way. If I talk to somebody 6, interviews down, I could say, "Hey, do you know Bob from Jones Bros?" So, well, let's dive right in.
Sounds good.
Welcome to the podcast, Bob.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
For
My
those,
middle name is Bennett, by the way.
Is it really?
We're both.
and which is your son's name?
kind of Ben's.
Yes.
In our own way.
2 T's or 1?
2.
2 T's, and that's your son's name.
Not Benet.
Not Benet. Yeah, I guess.
Bennett.
For those that don't know Bob, if you're Peoria faithful, you know Bob. You've been in business for how long, Bob? Jones Brothers.
Jones Brothers has been in business since 1939. Started in Pekin with Earl and Orville Jones, 2 wonderful names, Earl and Orville.
And those are your parents?
No.
No.
Those are the Jones brothers. I believe it was one of the brothers became friends with my dad at Kiwanis in Pekin, and when they decided to sell the business, my dad and uncle had the Woolsey funeral homes in Pekin, Delavan, Glassford at the time, and they decided to buy Jones Brothers in 1978.
78.
So it's been in my family since 78. I've worked there full time since 96, but started there in like college Christmases in 92, 93.
So you've been in the jewelry business for as long as you can remember.
A long time.
Yeah. What did you do before jewelry?
I was a busboy at Van Auken's.
Okay. I heard Van Auken's was pumping back in the day.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I showed up my first night to work, and they told me I couldn't because I was not 16. So I waited a couple months and went back. And then in college, I delivered pizzas in Bloomington, Indiana at the Monroe County Pizza Department. Our motto was to serve and deliver.
And that you did.
I did. It was on the other side of 37, which is a different part of Bloomington than or Monroe County than where IU is, which is cool. And then, had different college jobs. Graduated with my degree in teaching, high school education.
What was the subject matter expert?
History.
Okay.
But after student teaching, I realized that my ADD couldn't handle the classroom. When Mr. Stanley closed the door and said, "I'll see you in 6 weeks. I'll be in the teacher's lounge. Here's the key." And the door closed. I'm like, this is not for me. So my mom said, you either, come back and get into the jewelry business or figure out something else. But now's your chance. And so I went to gemology school in Los Angeles. I worked at the carry-out of Chin Chin, which was like an Asian fusion restaurant.
So you moved to LA when how old were you at the time?
I'd graduated from college, so 21, 22.
Okay.
And it was a 6-month program, and learned that a lot of people get mugged in LA, including me. So I got mugged in Brentwood, about maybe a half-swing sand wedge from the Mezzaluna, which is where they worked before and where they ate before OJ proceeded to either yes or no take a couple people's lives. And that's where I got mugged. And on my way back from LA, spent 2 months working at a restaurant in Snowbird at the Cliff Lodge, and did a little skiing for 2 months, and then came back, and I have not left. Since I came back, here I am.
Yeah. So, you got to do the thing. You got to do the thing. Before we get started in our conversation, you got to do the thing.
The thing.
You know what the thing is, Bob.
Jones Brothers Jewelers.
You got to do it close to the microphone.
Jones Brothers Jewelers. Actually, that's my wife who does it, so thank you, Mia. I don't do it justice.
And when was that created? When was that catchphrase?
So that was actually created in the late 80s by my dad. Moss Advertising at the time. Bob Moss led that company, and they had it filmed at the Civic Center. It was either during like a ballet or a symphony. And my dad was in one of those little side verandas that looked down at where most people sit at the Civic Center Theater, and the spotlight would shine on a lady's bracelet, and a lady in the veranda would say, "Ooh, that bracelet, where did she get that bracelet?" And my dad would lean in and go, "Jones Brothers Jewelers."
And so somebody captured that moment and said this would be...
No, that was actually set up.
I see.
As the ad.
I see.
And then it was, "Where'd she get that ring?" And then the lady stood up, and my dad's like, "Where are you going?" And she goes, "Jones Brothers Jewelers." And then we did it at somebody's house at a dinner. We did it at the country club. And then Chris just wove it into everything.
Shout out Chris Maddock.
Shout out to Chris Maddock. Yeah, so I'd say, I mean, it's been around for 30 plus years.
30 plus years.
Yeah.
Is there any thought to bring that back, like those visuals of having a moment where somebody says that
Probably
in your
should.
commercials? Yeah. Because if you're from Peoria and you've listened to the radio or TV for any period of time, you've heard the whisper. Mm-hmm. It's just it's in the DNA of Peoria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people, younger people, remember where it came from. They just think it's always been on the radio. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's when you went to gemology school?
Gemology.
Gemology.
The study of gemstones.
The study of gemstones. What's one thing that you learned or that you've learned over time that most people don't know about gems that it's just natural to your business?
So one of my greatest stories that came out of that was one of my instructors flew to Vietnam, took a whole tour of an alluvial mine, which is a ruby mine in the river, and pulled out a stone and got all the way back to the United States, and the stone was not real. So
From a mine.
From a mine, meaning if you work at the Gemological Institute of America teaching for the Gemological Institute of America, and you can go to Vietnam and buy a not real ruby from a mine in a river, that, you know, if you're going to go buy anything overseas, just know that you're taking a risk. I mean, if that guy who knew more than most people was able to buy something fake in a river. So that was always fascinating to me.
So how do you ensure that the stuff you sell at Jones Brothers is authentic?
Well, we have 3 gemologists, and the companies we work with are reputable.
Yes.
So, I mean, everything has a pretty good idea of the source it's coming from. And so, but, you know, people will go all over the world and come back and say, "Did I get a good deal?" Mm. And I always am like, "Do you want to know? Or would you rather just have enjoyed the vacation, think it's pretty, love what you bought, and just forever know that it was something you really wanted?"
Yeah. I think this is one thing that I've learned with, are you a cologne guy at all?
I'm not.
So I am. I love cologne. Just bought a new fragrance from Jean-Paul Gaultier. And I love cologne. I like cologne, and I'm starting to like watches.
I like the way you pronounce that. Gaultier.
Jean-Paul Gaultier.
Yeah.
But I don't consider myself a watch guy, or I didn't a couple months ago, but I got this watch from you guys, which I love. It's my daily wear. Mm-hmm. It's the Tissot, and Caleb, shout out Caleb from Jones Brothers. But there's a saying in cologne, basically, that if you buy dupes, because you can buy colognes that smell like the fragrance but are fake and are like a tenth of the price, because cologne can get expensive. But if you buy fake cologne, you know that you're wearing fake cologne. And so the feeling of what you get from wearing the cologne is not the same as if you bought just the new thing. Same thing with watches. If you bought a fake Rolex and you know you're wearing a fake Rolex, then you're wearing a fake Rolex. And it doesn't make you feel the same way if you bought the real thing.
Sure.
Yeah. So I guess the beauty is neither the beholder of knowing what you're wearing and what you're...
Yeah, and I think when people go on vacation, on a cruise, somewhere special, they want to buy something. I don't know that they should buy it because they think they got a great deal. Or something like that. I went to Antwerp on a diamond buying trip, and the whole thing was set up Antwerp, Belgium.
Okay.
Which for years in Europe has been the largest cutting location in Europe. I mean, there's India and other places, but Antwerp's historically been there. And I remember going into some different large either site holders or wholesalers, and while their offices and stuff were impressive, I'm like, the pricing didn't seem a whole lot different than what it was if I were to buy it back. And that was 15 plus years ago. So to me, it's like everything's changed because it's a global market.
Yes.
But just because you're wherever said gemstone's from doesn't necessarily mean you're buying it. It's such a great deal. Just enjoy it, buy it, feel good about it. If it's pretty, enjoy it, wear it, and don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So,
speaking of gemstones, where they come from, I'm assuming that just from the marketing and advertising I've been fed over the time over the past 5 years that is it engineered diamonds or what do you call them?
Lab grown.
Lab grown.
Synthetic.
Are those growing far more like percentage base larger and larger every year as you continue to sell?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, I mean, synthetic diamonds have been effectively made for a long time, like diamond saws. GE, mined or created or lab grew diamonds 90 to 100 years ago. So a lot of people don't know that.
I didn't know that.
Synthetic rubies and sapphires have been made for years.
I didn't know there was such thing as synthetic rubies and sapphires.
Oh, yeah. And so the difference between a synthetic and a simulant, so like a cubic zirconia, that's a simulant. That's something made to look like a diamond. A synthetic diamond is an actual diamond.
Right.
That's just not coming from the ground.
Yes.
It's manufactured.
But it's the same carbon features.
Same exact chemical features, except for some trace materials that are left in the growing process, which is the same for rubies, sapphires, emeralds, or whatever are synthetic. So, yeah, I mean, the lab-grown diamond world has blown up in the last 6 years. And I always say it's lab-grown diamonds are tougher than, say, lab-grown rubies, sapphires, or emeralds because they have a color attached to them. And their color is so a certain way that they almost look fake because you never see rubies or sapphires or emeralds that look that nice.
That pure.
Diamonds are just clear.
I see.
And so you can't really tell them apart,
which
has made it interesting.
Here's my question. So, and I've heard that if you took a lab-grown versus a ground diamond to a jeweler or professional, they couldn't really tell the difference unless there was markings on it to describe it.
Normally,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
The difference between a lab-grown and natural, just you put it in a piece of jewelry and you're trying to decipher it. I mean, unless you have a tester or something that definitely can pick up those traces, you're not going to know.
And so how come, if I were a lab-grown manufacturer, wouldn't you make all lab-grown diamonds the same purity, like the purest of pure?
That's what it's evolving to. So most lab-growns are colorless, VS, or both.
Yes, all the top.
Versus what comes from nature is, has
imperfect.
God's footprint or fingerprint. So it's no diamonds, no one diamond is the same, which is kind of unique back to your natural cologne versus, the faux smells.
But my point is like, if you were a manufacturer of lab-grown diamonds, why make a diamond that's imperfect? Because if you can truly,
I think they've mastered the process, so now it's not an issue. But I know 6 years ago you would see stuff that was not what it is today, and I think it's a technological product that technology evolves over time and it gets better.
So fast forward 10 years, do you think lab-grown will just take over the market and be?
I don't think so, because again, back to the whether it's Rolex or Louis Vuitton or whatever,
Jean Paul Gaultier.
Yeah, that. There is a population that wants something natural, that wants something rare, that wants to know this is something that is, there's not another 15,000 going to be made. On the flip side, most women want a big, beautiful, sparkly diamond that's in a fashionable ring that they like. Mm-hmm. And so there's not a huge preference one way or the other.
I see.
So
so going back to Jones Brothers, what do you guys see as like your competitive advantage to the marketplace? Like what do you guys do so differently that's made you successful over the past 20 years?
I mean, I go back to stories I heard from Earl and Orville Jones, people walking down Court Street in Pekin, and they see a ring in the window, go in and say, I'd like to try it on. And Mr. Jones would be like, just take it home, and if you like it, we'll send you a bill. So they've always been approachable. Mm. They've always been really a hometown, like legit, family-owned, in the community, just very real and authentic.
Yeah.
And so fast forward to, when my dad, my uncle took it over, then my mom, myself is, we've always been extremely approachable. We've always been affordable to everyone. Mm-hmm. And so, I've always said, go to the mall and look around. You'll find that the pricing is likely better at Jones Brothers because we don't have a percentage rent that we have to pay. We don't have shareholders like Signet that we have to appease. And so, the affinity for us being fun, approachable, laid back, casual, is what sets us apart. We're very community minded. I mean, we've raised over close to $400,000 for the Heller Center for Kids with Cancer.
Wow.
I think we originally pledged 100. Our goal was 2 and our stretch was 3, and we surpassed 3 last year. And I don't know where we're at this year, but probably 350 to 375.
That's incredible.
And so
what does that community center do?
So the Heller Center for Kids with Cancer was started by John and Annette Heller. They made $1 million donation. Cat matched it, and now they've raised over $10 million. It's very similar to the Rizzo Family Foundation up in Chicago for Anthony Rizzo with the hospital up there, Lurie's Children's Hospital. Basically, it covers everything that the insurance doesn't. So like your dietitian, your psychologist. There's a survivorship clinic, which, our motto with the Heller Center is survival is just the start. If you're 4 years old and you contract cancer and you're treated for 2 to 3 years, you're cancer free at 7. Do you think the treatments for the last 3 years changed you as a person? Drastically.
Drastically, yeah.
Whether it's chemical, whether it's physical, or whether it's strictly emotional.
Mental, yeah.
So, we're getting to the point where 80+% of children that have cancer survive.
Wow.
What's left is the part that a lot of people don't talk about, which is a lot of lives, families, siblings, that's just completely changed forever. And the Heller Center for Kids with Cancer picks up where other agencies and organizations don't. And I was talking to a physician at our children's hospital here, which is where the Heller Center is, and she said, I think she'd graduated from her residency in pediatric oncology, I think in New York. And of all the graduates in her class, none of them were working at a hospital that had a survivorship clinic, which is so important. So I love it because, we have so many, there's children that are treated in St. Louis and Iowa City. Over 50% of the kids with cancer locally are treated at Children's Hospital of Illinois. Mm-hmm. And then there's quite a few that are, treated in Memphis at St. Jude. If you collectively want to donate to an organization that is going to help children and families either battling cancer, or there's probably more that have survived it locally.
Yeah.
The Heller Center for Kids with Cancer is a really cool way to do it, and to know that, there's child psychologists that are actually not just working with the patient, but the family, siblings. If you were, let's say you had 2 or 3 brothers and sisters, right. One of them had cancer. Like your upbringing for those 2 to 3 years while they're being treated changed drastically because all the focus goes to the child with cancer.
Sure.
So it wreaks havoc, and it's nice to have something like that in the Peoria area that a lot of people don't know about. So
I never heard of that before. I know the Children's Hospital in OSF is a big deal. My sister, she has something called Turner syndrome, where there's different extremes of it. And she's on the lighter side of the extreme. But one of the attributes of Turner syndrome is you don't grow to your full potential in terms of literal height and weight, and you're smaller. So she was fully grown at 4'8", which is pretty short. And so she made the conscious decision when she was 16 years old to have her femurs and her, maybe it was her tibias, I can't remember which bone, but snapped in half. Her legs broken in half. They put a rod in the middle and then lengthened the rods. So it lengthened her legs 5 inches to make her 5 foot tall. And it was a long process where for years she had these things coming out of her legs. If you can imagine this, Bob. And every 3 months they would turn it a quarter to basically lengthen the rods physically. And then your body heals around it, and you do it again. So you do that for a couple of years, and your body's lengthened out. The reason I tell you that is because we all experienced that as she was going through this. Mm-hmm. So, and to your point, the whole family dynamic changes, where you're trying to help this person get cured, I suppose, or go through this process. But it's the family certainly dynamic changed when that happened, for a good reason. But it's still something pretty extreme.
Yeah, and treating the cancer is one thing. Treating the person,
right,
and the family with cancer is a whole different thing.
Totally.
So they've created a Survivor or a Thrive book where they put everything that you've gone through in the process of treating the cancer whether it's how you felt, what medications you had, what treatments you had, how you felt after the treatment, so that, old school binder, say you had cancer and you were 5, and at age 26 you're married and trying to have kids, and struggling with it and can't figure it out, and you've got this book, and it's like, well, here's everything I went through when I was 5 and had cancer. It might be on your My Chart, but probably not how you felt and different thing. You probably won't even remember it.
Right.
But yeah, so it's really cool, and grateful for John and Annette for having, the meeting with Dr. Kay Savings, who said, people just don't get it. Mm-hmm. Like, we're doing really well treating the cancer, but there's this whole mess over here that nobody understands. And
yes.
And John had a buddy who'd lost his brother to cancer and was very involved in the local St. Jude organization, and was just kind of like, what do you mean we don't get it? She went through that whole explanation of, there's just a lot of kids and families that are a mess because of it, and that's what we want to start focusing on, and we have. And I don't know if you've been down to the new cancer center. Mm-mm. The Comprehensive Cancer Center at OSF is like a $250 million cancer center that is one of the elite facilities in the world.
Yep.
There's a proton beam that you would be totally into, because it's technology like treating cancer that I don't think the country of Canada has a proton beam.
Wow. And Peoria has one.
And we have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be medical tourism is what they've talked about.
Yeah.
Is that people will come here for, 6 to 7 weeks for their treatments.
Sure.
Well, they got to go somewhere. So.
My wife worked at OSF for a couple of years, and her mother still works at OSF, and she's part of the staffing with nurses. My wife worked in the emergency room.
Okay.
And I don't know how, shout out to nurses, I don't know how nurses, I don't know how they do their job.
They're passionate about it.
Yes, but I guess the job is one part of it. Mm-hmm. The mental toll it takes to take care of people and to be spit on, and not to say all the negative things, but working with the world when they're sick is not easy. Mm-mm. And the stories that I heard from my wife is just, it's beyond what most people could probably take.
It's a special gift and calling.
Yes.
So
I respect the medical industry, the sick care industry of taking care of sick people tremendously, because you got to have a passion for it. The amount of time she came home from work after a 12-hour shift, third shift, and would sit in the bathtub for as long as she could, just depressing from the day, because she had so many things happen and people die, that she tried to save, was a tremendous amount of emotional stress. Yeah.
And I would imagine the gratitude shown to her and others in that world because of people coming in not in their best mindset.
Exactly.
The first thing they think of is probably not a 5-star review. And, yeah. Hey, I am so grateful for you taking care of me when I was whatever.
Out of my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
famously around this office, I am very, I don't like needles, Bob. I don't like needles. I don't like blood. I especially don't like needles, but I had this thing happen about a year and a half ago, where my I almost passed out, and my heart was going really high blood pressure and high blood rate or heart rate. And so my wife's like, we need to go to the emergency room right now. And I was like, I'm going to go, but I'm not getting stuck with needles. So we go into this room, and they're like, we're going to need to take a blood sample. We're going to need to do this. And I said, no, you're not. Whatever you can do outside the body, I'm okay with. But I stopped.
Where did that come from?
I don't know, man. My dad had it when he was a kid, probably, but I had blood drawn when I was 13 years old, and I passed out, and something about it just really freaks me out. Yeah, does it?
No, I don't like needles, but I'm like it's not as rough as it is for you. So I did my first set of PRP injections I've got tendonitis in my knees.
PRP.
PRP is plasma-rich platelets.
Okay.
So they pull your blood out, put it in a centrifuge, spin it,
okay,
pull out the plasma-rich platelets, and then they inject them into basically like on my knee.
You have knee problems?
I do.
Yeah.
And it's not a cure. It's more of a let's see if we can get 5 to 10 more years before we have to do anything medical. Dan Joseph at the Joseph Medical World over there on University by the Fish House.
Yeah.
He's Amanda's the one who did it, and talking me through it. She goes, when I put this into your knee, there's like not room for it. So it's going to feel like I'm putting something in a place that it doesn't want it. And man, it hurt like a mother, but it was quick. And then she goes, when you stand up, your knees are going to feel full.
I bet.
And they did. And you can't ice it. Well, you can ice it the first day, but like after that, you have to add heat because the goal is to inflame the injury because it's regenerative medicine. So those plasma-rich platelets
start to work on the tissue that has, other issues. So I got 2 more sets of those. Coming. So I'll have, My dad got both hips replaced, and he was having a lot of lower back issues and had one hip replaced. And he recovered within a couple weeks, but his one comment was, "I wish I would have done this 5 years sooner."
Yeah,
and I've heard that from knee surgeries as well.
Well, in the PRP, she's like, "You're coming in at a time where it's not fully gone. You're coming in at a time where you can do this, and can buy yourself 5 to 10 years of actually knees feeling good. Don't run a lot, but you can run without pain, and so ski, which I love to do. So
you're a big skier.
I am.
Where do you go? Where's the mountain?
I grew up going to Colorado and then worked at a season at Snowbird in Utah.
Yeah.
And then we had a place out in Park City for a bit. So raised our kids skiing in Park City. And
something about snowing down a mountain. So peaceful.
It is.
It's
and
so
it's forced
peaceful.
Interaction.
Yes.
I love talking to people.
So when
you get on a chairlift, it's like people are like, God, it's not that guy. But you learn so much. And there's people from all over the world. Some of our family's best friends from England and California, we met skiing, and they're like my second dad, my second mom, people like that, and it's just a unique interaction with the with nature,
shared experience,
and living and working at Snowbird with. So back then, like the Red Bull thing, didn't exist. So it was, oh my gosh, I can't think of his name. It'll come to me. But Warren Miller, who made all the ski films, like back when I was in my 20s, so 30 years ago. So everybody was trying to get sponsored by Warren Miller that I worked with, and so we would ski, in cliffs and in the woods and stuff like that. And I was skiing with these guys, and I'm like, I've never seen anybody do that. I didn't know you could do it, but learning that,
like extreme jumps and flips.
Yeah,
and stuff.
But when you're doing it in 2 to 4 feet of powder, you're it's like a pool, so you're not going to get hurt.
I see.
So, but it was fascinating, and I learned a lot. And it's always good. Like if you're a golfer, it's always good to play with somebody who's got about a 10-stroke better handicap because you tend to
learn from them.
Yeah, you learn better. And skiing, I mean, in a blizzard, skiing through the trees, the next day when it's not a blizzard and you can go back through those trees and be like, I did that.
Yes.
Now I can do it.
Yeah.
And so it was fun. So I'd love to ski. And
I think that's a similar thing to business where you don't really know what you're capable of until you start doing it. And then you start figuring out that you can do things, and then you just keep doing more things that you didn't know you could do.
Fail forward, fail fast.
Yeah.
Keep trying, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, that worked. That worked.
And then you just build. But then the funny reaction from the public is kind of like they almost assume you've been doing it for forever. And so the public kind of assumes perfection, and you are learning things as you go. And we can talk about that, where there's just mistakes being made. There's just things that happen in business where you learn things, and it's necessary to grow. It sucks to do when you're learning something and failing, but it's necessary for growth. I talk about that a lot, where it's necessary to grow by failing.
It is, and I heard this somewhere, and I don't know where it was, but your good customers are people you've always taken care of well. Your greatest customers are the people you screwed up on, and you figured out how to solve it and move it to a happy place, and they're amazed at the fact that you were able to take it from here to here. Those are your greatest customers. And it's everybody's going to goof up. I mean, my sister, who's a doctor, says there's a reason we call it practicing medicine. Yeah. It's not perfect. Mistakes are made. We're human. And there's a lot of humans. And I mean, you're in the roofing and solar business. You've got a lot of employees, contractors that do things that, I mean, when it's 95 degrees and 100% humidity, a mistake might be made. I know I would make a mistake.
Yeah.
I might sweat. That might cause something. So, the point being, I think being in business for ourselves, what we do recognize when we're out in public is, what? It's hard to find good people. Sometimes you're only as good as your newest person that hasn't learned yet. And everybody just needs to have a little patience because, my gosh, we've gotten a lot better at doing what we're doing now. I mean, think about how things were done 10 years ago and how much better we are.
Right.
So everybody's expectations better. So when we do screw up, it's like, sometimes people lose their minds, but I would say most people are pretty chill.
Pretty reasonable, especially in this area.
Yeah.
I think that's true.
I think it's the Midwest.
There are some outliers for sure, but certainly going back to your staff and the people you said that you're only as good as your newest employee. Every time I've walked into Jones Brothers, and I've been a customer of yours for a couple of years now, it seems like the staff is pretty cogent. Mm-hmm. Like you have the same staff for a long time. And I don't see that many new faces. I've seen probably a few over the past couple of years, but
sure.
It seems like you can attract and you can retain talent pretty well. What do you attribute that to?
I would say knowing who you are as a company and making sure that the people that you hire fit your culture and your core values. I mean, a lot of people put core values on a wall and think that that's who they have to be to their customers. Sometimes it's even more important to make sure that when you're hiring, you're actually looking to attract people that emulate your culture and your core values.
Yes.
Because if you have someone in your organization that isn't a core values fit, doesn't mean they're a bad person, just means they're not a fit. And it's just going to constantly it's like that shoe that doesn't quite fit. And if you don't have the right pair of socks, you're going to have a blister. And it's not fun for anybody.
No, not even the person that you're trying to bring into the fold. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was 3 years ago, we started running on EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system out of Gino Wickman's book, Traction.
I'm familiar.
And it is his philosophy is that every business has an operating system, whether it's defined or not. Some of it's just a messed up family operating system. Some of it's like a really strict, like Six Sigma or something like that. And so what I've found in running on EOS and becoming an EOS implementer for other companies is when you have your vision traction organizer put together that has your core values and has your three uniques and your marketing focus and your 10-year plan, like when you start to really define that vision, and then you get that vision down to the ground, from 10,000 feet to the ground level.
Yep.
That's when your organization starts to really feel healthy, and not just for you, but your people and your customers and your employees' families. And so vision traction healthy, which is what EOS moves or works to move companies towards, is really that like sweet sauce. It's that thing that is what makes life a lot more fun in business for everybody.
Yeah.
And so when I was introduced to that and really started to dive into it, a guy named Harlan Geiser from Bloomington was our first implementer, and then he helped me become an implementer, and just seeing what an intentional focus on vision, which guys like you and I are really good at vision. But we also think that everybody in the organization should just understand it. And nobody really does, because it's all in our heads.
You had to define it.
Yeah. And so that's pretty cool. So, that's the part that I would say keeping a relatively stable staff team, been there for a long time, is really focusing on those principles, core values, and making sure that you're intentional not only about hiring and developing that culture and those core values, but being true to them and not just words on a paper. So,
100%. I heard from somebody else that how you treat customers is one thing, but how you treat your staff, kind of what you were alluding to a few minutes ago. But how you treat your staff, that will reflect on how they treat the customer. And that's a really important jump, where some people have it in their mind that they're going to do everything. And even when they hire employees, they try to overstep and try to do everything. Every time I've walked into your establishment, I thought that I would just work with you naturally just because I somewhat knew you, but then you immediately passed me off to somebody else, right? And so you're essentially, you're giving them the opportunity to establish the core values as opposed to you just doing everything.
They're also smarter than I am. Yeah. And they're also way more into, like Caleb with watches.
Love Caleb. Shout out Caleb.
Yeah. Allie with gemstones.
Yeah.
Morgan with design. I mean, there's just, you can go through. I mean, my son's actually got knowledge of goldsmithing and like what goes on to set a diamond size of ring, what things should, like how it should look. I just like people. And so I love talking to people, but I don't get into all the details of all that other stuff. Have you ever taken the Colby? Have you ever heard of the Kolbe
Is that
Index?
a personality test?
It's Kathy Kolbe, who is Wonderlick's daughter.
Okay, that's
So the Wonderlick
football
test
Wonderlick.
was what they used to give to
Quarterbacks, right?
the whole people drafting, and the highest Wonderlick scores were usually the quarterback or the offensive lineman.
Okay.
Which I was, an offensive lineman, not a quarterback. That's the cognitive. Kathy Kolbe created a conative, which is how you interact with the world, and it's basically starts from birth and goes on. So we did it for our kids before they could even fill out the answers.
Wow.
And now that Bennett's 22, Charlie's 20, and Edie's 17, it's all pretty much the same as what it was, which basically is cool.
Natural programming.
Yeah. And so I'm a quick start, which is likely what you are, most visionaries of companies. And I'm not I'm a 2 fact finder out of 10. I'm a 3 follow through out of 10, which means I don't need any information and I won't follow through. But man, do I have a lot of good ideas.
Man, I'm going to go.
Yeah. And so in the whole scheme of things, I try, somebody like Caleb, who's really into watches, really into gold buying, or Allie, who's super into gemstones. Like, why wouldn't I want to introduce somebody who's coming in to look at that or is interested in that to talk to somebody who really is passionate about it?
Yes.
So that's how we roll.
I love that. For me, maybe you can speak to this too. I'm really proud of our team and how they've transformed, because I generally, maybe you're the same way, Bob. I have a strong vision. I like very general vision of each person's role, but I let them determine the specifics and how they do their job. I really don't like to define to an extreme measure. Now, there's certain KPIs and certain statistics I like to hit, but how they do their job, I want them to figure out themselves. And as they figure it out, now as they start to excel in those roles, I become very proud, because it's like they did that.
Yeah.
And they can actually look back to that and say, I did this, as opposed to me coaching through a 60-page workbook about how they do their job. I want them to essentially create it from scratch.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think the challenge is making sure that if they replace themselves and move into a different role, that you're not solely dependent upon that person doing it. Because how does that person coming along learn it? And that's where, some basic processes are important.
Of course.
Of how to do things. But I would agree. I like allowing people to be themselves as opposed to trying to fit them into whatever the Jones Brothers box is, or this box and that. And that's our freedom that we have running our own business, is that we can do that.
Yeah.
And
HR is not looking over your shoulder.
If it works, great.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, it'll show. And that's on us. I think my mom, so Norm Brinker, who married lady from Peoria, Kathy Brinker, and started the Chili's franchise.
Okay.
And he would walk up and down the runways on airplanes and just talk to people about their experiences at Chili's. And he always said that if somebody had a bad experience at Chili's, it wasn't the server or the cook. It was effectively the general manager and ultimately the regional manager and ultimately him who runs the company that needs to figure out why that problem occurred. And I always thought that was kind of neat. Yeah, we as visionaries and owners of the companies can blame whoever we want for the problems that exist, but ultimately they're ours.
Big time.
So
ultimate accountability. I started that probably in 2020. Listen to Jocko Willink, if you know that name.
I've heard of Jocko.
Okay, the Navy SEAL guy. But ultimate, just extreme accountability. Yeah. If something happens in your company that goes wrong, it's on you, period. And that mindset, it's more so, it's in practice, but it's a mindset of adopting that this is my fault first. And when your people find that you fall on the sword and that you're taking accountability for things, even when it's not necessarily your specific fault, I think that they start to do the same almost naturally.
Or some of them deal with personalities differently, that may be the type of customer that comes in and just wants to blame somebody when it's really not on them to blame someone, because the problem was created outside of the organization. It was their problem, but when they want to come in and make it your problem, I love talking through that with people because it's easy.
Yeah.
What do you want us to do? Like, how do we bring this to a resolution so that you're happy?
Yes.
And the person who loves to fight is
disarmed.
They're completely disarmed, and they're like, oh, okay. I had a lady cuss me out this Christmas, and I'm like, I'm here to help you. Like, we're good. Like, I don't know why you're swearing at me right now. And she goes, oh, I'm not. I'm swearing at my husband. I said, fine. What can we do? I'm like, good deal. We got it done. Are we happy? Yep. We'll see you in January. And I think that's showing people that are just up. And who knows? I mean, I was an acronym MRI, most respectful interpretation. Like when somebody comes in irate to my store, or someone flies past you and cuts you off in traffic, you can look at it and say, oh my God, that person's a total jerk. Or you can look at it and say, man, I need to say a prayer for that person, because there's obviously something going on in their life that is so miserable that they can't just have a normal interaction with somebody without being this irate. And I don't have anything but compassion and empathy for that person.
Sure.
Instead of being like, oh my God, taking it on myself. So I really enjoy that. I don't know.
I do too.
Kind of my
hard problem solving. I enjoy when the problem becomes so sticky that they're like, we just need you to come in here and help.
Yeah.
And charting out what the person's expectations are. I ask the same question a lot, Bob, is like, what can we do to make this right? You name it. Name it what we need to do to make this right. And most of the time, it's very attainable. It's like, okay, done. What else? Well, nothing. Okay, then we're
cool,
good
you want
here.
a cup of coffee?
Cool, yeah. You want to talk about how's your son or daughter doing?
Exactly.
But I think we've been programmed as human beings, Bob. Where how many times have you been to some place where they don't make it right, and you have to fight tooth and nail to do it? And
that goes back to your point of specific ways people handle things. Sometimes those specifics are so specific that companies don't handle things.
True.
Because it can't.
They can't.
Because they haven't been trained to. And so that's the luxury of what we do, is we're still close enough to it that we can. And isn't that fun?
It is fun.
I would imagine doing roofs, anything can happen.
It's true.
It's somebody's
anything
home.
can happen. It's thousands of nails, when you're removing, and thousands of replacing. But I think the diamond industry and the roofing industry are very similar in the sense that it's something very personal to the homeowner or to the person, right? A diamond ring can mean an engagement, a failed marriage, right? Something that meant something in the past but doesn't anymore. The house, if you're splitting up and moving in different directions, and then you have to, right? It's very personal to the person. Do you have memories in that house that you have to now give up? Or you're starting new memories with the baby. You're moving to a different house, right? These are very personal things to people. So I understand that a house means more, a roof means more than the perceived value of it.
Oh, absolutely.
And
especially when they leak.
Especially when they leak.
Because then the real, memorabilia and the things that matter the most to people can get ruined.
That's exactly
Whether it's
right.
a piece of furniture or a picture or, and man, you never realize how important that one little tiny diamond was until it's gone. And then it's like, but this came from my grandma.
Yes.
And then it's like, oh my Lord.
Yes.
Yeah, that little diamond means a lot.
The iceberg gets way deeper.
Way deeper. And that's the story that's fun to find out, okay, why did she mean that much to you? Tell me about your grandma.
Exactly. Yes.
And trying to make sure that picture is preserved.
We had a customer not too long ago who rental property, and she was not the owner of the home. It was a landlord. Landlord declined to solve the roofing problem. So she called me and she said, hey, I have a roof leak, and it's leaking into my daughter's bedroom. But I don't own the property, and my landlord won't pay for the repair. So I'm like, okay, give me the landlord's number. I'll call them. She's like, no, I don't want you to do that. I just need this fixed. How much can you do it for? And I could tell the specifics of the situation was she didn't have that much money to actually solve it. So I'm like, okay, I've got a leak. It's leaking onto a little child's bed. And so I was like, I'm going to just solve this problem. we patched the leak. It stopped. And she's like, how much do I owe you? And I said, this one's on me. Unfortunately for landlords, sometimes that's just the way it is, where they're not willing to invest in their own homes that they own. And you have these people that...
Yeah, they're beholden to
What are
them.
you supposed to do?
You're stuck.
You're stuck.
Yeah.
And, money to... Being a person of the community, I ask myself that question a lot of like, what does it actually mean to be a business owner investing into the public?
If you do the right thing, it comes back tenfold.
Yeah.
Whether it's through personnel,
That's right.
employees, customers, anything. You do the right thing and the universe will take care. And if you do the wrong thing, it will come back and bite you 10 times faster than doing the right thing.
You got to commit.
Yeah.
Commit
100%.
to that. Yeah. So you've run Jones Builders since 1996. You said you were
I worked with my mom from 96 until 2018.
And so she's now retired?
She is.
And she's still with us?
She is.
Has the relationship gotten better or worse since
Way better. She loves her checks, and I love my independence.
Yeah.
And she loves her grandkids, so
Yes.
I've got that. So, yeah, no, it's... So my dad passed away in 1989 relating to, the business and some things. And so my mom, when I was 16, effectively took over a company she knew nothing about, became a single mom to not the easiest child to raise. My sister was...
how many siblings do you have?
I have a sister. She's older.
Okay.
So she was a freshman at Northwestern at the time. She's a doctor now. And she and my mom are two very powerful alpha women. So I was always very lucky to be having the respect that I had for women, because my mom was one way and my sister would beat the living daylights out of me because I deserved it, because I was a pain in the butt. So 1989, she became, the sole owner of the store, and
Wow.
that kind of a thing. So,
And did she... I'm sure that was a learning process for her, because she wasn't involved in the business when your dad passed away, or was she
was
like
not.
loosely affiliated?
no, I mean, he would talk to her about the business, but
Sure.
she wasn't involved. So
And so that was a learning process for her too.
huge. Yeah.
And you were how old in 1996?
16.
In 1996?
1989.
Okay, when your dad passed.
Yeah. So
Got it.
she ran it effectively 7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were 23 when you came into the business.
Yes.
Did you feel like, so I was 30 when I started this, did you feel like there was no, of course there's a learning curve, but did you feel like gaining respect in an industry that's centuries old, it was difficult at 23?
I don't think I've ever worried about it. I just
Did your job.
did what I did, and
What was your mindset when you were 23 years old to kind of,
not good.
okay.
I mean, I think at 23, you think that, I mean, you're a watch guy, so we picked up, we had Rolex at the time. I think we had Seiko. We picked up Maurice Lacroix, picked up Tag Heuer. We picked up Breitling. We picked up,
So many.
yeah, and it wasn't a good idea. And when the accountant told us, I think it was 90, probably 98, 99, you guys should really look at closing the business. It was like, whoa.
Wow.
And so then my mom's like, we're not quitters. We need to look for a new location. And that's when we started looking to build a building. And
That's a massive risk though, no? If your finances are not looking good and you chose to build a building at that point?
I would say the business wasn't doing well, but the finances,
I see.
my mom was a pretty shrewd.
At the same time,
Saver.
I guess that was my point, but I'm saying that's a big leap of faith.
I would say it is, but it was either the 3rd or a 4th. It was the 3rd or the 5th of July that occurred on a Monday, and nobody else was open. And we were in the Metro Center.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 3 or 4 customers come to our store that had been to all 4 jewelers that surrounded us. So we had Potter and Anderson, O'Brien's, Johnson and Vaughn, and Bremer's. Of that, I think Bremer's and Potter and Anderson are still left. They'd been to all 4 and then come to us, which was a sign to me if that's on one day when we've had maybe 20, if 25% of the customers that came in today only came in because the other 4 stores were closed, think of how many opportunities we're missing. So we went and started looking for property, and
Explain that for me, Bob.
meaning they had gone to every other location before coming to us. If the others had been open, they likely would have never even come to us.
I see.
Meaning,
you were the
so
last
on a-
choice. You were the last
Yeah,
choice.
we were buried in Metro Center
Yes.
when, things outside of Metro Center started to get better than Metro Center. And so once we built the new location, it was instant 50% increase in business.
Wow.
Year one.
Because you invested into the brand of Jones Brothers in a sense.
No, we located out by
location.
shops at Grand Prairie and
Yep.
location. And Grand Prairie was hopping back then. We built the strip center. We had 4 tenants, I think, at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cool. A lot of things really happened. Like I said, you take care of the community and the universe, and there were a lot of things we did with that building that, looking back, it's because of how it's positioned, it almost looks like the whole building is Jones Brothers until
It
you
does.
drive past it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stores that friends of mine that are 10,000 square feet, and they're all jewelry stores, and they pay the entire thing themselves. And
It's a
good for
massive
them.
inventory.
Yeah, and for us, it's like, we had a third of the building when we opened it, and the other 2/3 was tenants that were great and helped with the rent. So, that was cool. We had friends in Bloomington that had been broken into through the roof. So you'd cut through the roof and hang between the roof and the hung ceiling. And so when they come in the morning to turn off the alarm, you'd have about 30 minutes to tie people up and take everything that once they'd open the safe. And so we're like, maybe we should just leave the ceilings open. Well, that's created a really cool architectural, there's windows and, nobody can break in through the roof, but it's also an experience. People walk in there and they're like, this place is huge. This is cool. Most stores, it's like,
yes,
the ceiling's right on top of you.
So that's something that I don't think about in this building as much because we don't have inventory that people would steal. And even if I did have inventory, it'd be hundreds of pounds to lift. So it's like, good luck.
Yeah, nobody steals.
Not that I'm challenging somebody to come steal stuff, but
no.
For jewelry business, that's probably priority number one.
Oh, it's crazy.
Is like you have to have an insane.
It was crazy before September 11th. So there was mainly Colombians in our country that were doing, they would hold the owner's, spouse and children hostage and then take the owner of the store and clean out the safe, and then you'd come back and hopefully your family's fine. I remember reading those stories and thinking, oh my gosh. And then September 11th hit and that just stopped because people from Colombia weren't like the people that were in the jewelry theft rings were no longer around.
Colombia has jewelry theft rings.
Back then.
Yeah.
And then I would say, I don't know, in the last 4 or 5 years, you can see retail thefts up all over. Yeah. Luckily.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in Peoria, but I mean, you look at LA and San Francisco and then you read, in the Jewelry Security Alliance magazines and it's like, oh my gosh, like the stuff that people go through. Yeah. I mean, where else can you go and grab a diamond or a chain or a ring and instantly cash it out for a couple $100 in 5 minutes?
True.
You can't rob banks anymore.
No. Mostly digital.
Not that I ever suggested anybody do it in the first place. But no, I mean, you look at it and it's like, oh my gosh, yeah. So, I mean, luckily, again, the way our store is built, we've got windows all over and we're not in a neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So you look around and it's like, we've had people that case us. I mean, we had somebody probably 2 months ago that, drove up and you could tell they were casing us, but they didn't come in. There's part of it's because you look around and it's like where are you going to go
How you get away?
Without somebody, not following you and you getting caught? There's a lot better communities that you could go do that to, I guess, from what I've read. And so, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that fell, into our laps nicely with that building that, like, you just would never think of, that stuff. So
it's fascinating.
And it's got a great yard, so I've always mowed it, or my boys have mowed it, and, it's fun. I mean, I love mowing yards. It's instant gratification.
I'll show the camera this watch here. Maybe I can do this for this camera over here so Ben can get that. Yeah. So I bought these watches for my team here for a couple of founders that have been with me since day one as a gift. Not a watch guy before that, but met your son Bennett through that process. Bennett and Caleb came and sized the watches on site, which was fantastic. Bennett strikes me as not a similar personality to you in some ways, more reserved. Mm-hmm. Very polite, solid kid. So congratulations on raising a good son.
Thank you. Yeah, he's way more into like fixing things and learning about things.
Right.
And he understands that you can actually solve problems on YouTube, which I don't
subscribe
have
to.
the patience for. Yeah, I mean, he would probably be, he's kind of runs our repair department, mm-hmm. and we'll have anywhere between 150 to 210 jobs in at a time, which is a lot.
Wow.
I mean, they're little envelopes. But, making sure that the right parts and the right jobs and the right goldsmiths are doing the right stuff and getting, things done. And yeah, it's I couldn't do that.
No.
So I'm grateful that he has come in and taken that role.
Mm-hmm.
So
he seems like somebody who, in the back room, very focused and diligent on keeping systems and processes running. That's how he struck me as somebody who's very detail oriented.
Way more than his father.
Yeah. I'm the same.
Yeah.
Where Caleb, on the other hand, is much more personality forward.
But he loves hands-on.
Yes.
So he's like, if you look at the Colby, it's fact finder, follow through, quick start, implementer, and implementers like to use their hands.
I see.
And he and Bennett are both long in the world of, or in the side of implementing.
Are they good friends?
Yeah, they're friends from working together, and have similar interests that like video games and other things.
Young people stuff.
Young people stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so inside baseball here, Bob. Whenever I walk into a jewelry store, every sales rep has, they're wearing everything. They're wearing earrings, they're wearing watches, they're wearing bracelets, rings. Is that a requirement for your sales reps to essentially wear the product to show it off as they sell?
So a lot of different designers or suppliers actually will incentivize the sale of their product and give them awards to be able to then wear their product.
I see.
And then we have different spiffs, and it used to be Bob and Betty Bucks. Betty's my mom now. It's Bob Bucks, and so we do a draw like quarterly, where people get bucks to be able to buy jewelry, just as a part of the incentive or whatever.
Okay.
And so they get to buy stuff that they probably wouldn't.
I see.
And on the flip side, I'm in a good place with them wearing things that we sell.
You want to sell?
Yeah. So,
whenever I've gone to your store, it's just they're blinged out. They're wearing, but it's a good thing to naturally wear and to speak to the product in useful terms. That yes, I have this, and this is what to look out for, and this is why you do these things. So
yeah, I realized probably around the time when you got those watches, I'm like, man, I haven't worn a watch since COVID. I probably should. So I started wearing one.
I tell you what, I did not expect myself to be a watch wearer. I've worn an Apple Watch for a number of years, but I like wearing watches. And there's something dumb about a basic one. Not dumb. It's not a smartwatch.
Yes.
And I like that.
It's a dumb watch.
I'm not getting notifications of everything, an email coming through from a vendor that I don't want to watch and interrupting my day every 6 seconds.
Well, and I mean, I used to be in a program called Strategic Coach with Dan Sullivan. You should look into that at some point. It's pretty cool. It's up in Chicago. I think they're out of Toronto. But I think it might have been either 98, 99 when the tech crash, or 2008, but he sent out the Scary Times Success Manual.
Okay.
And one of them is just shut down any outside noise like the news, like social media. And I think a dumb watch does that.
It does.
Yeah, because if you're constantly being reminded of how miserable this world is by your notifications, like, it's not good.
Have you ever gotten to mindsets like that before where you're looking at news all the time and just like got overwhelmed?
I am passionate about like learning about how people think. I'm interested in our government. I'm interested in politics on both sides. Like, I would much rather have a conversation with somebody who thinks differently than I do so that I can learn.
Yeah.
So I like that kind of a news. But like, on New Year's Day when the tragedy in New Orleans and, like that stuff, like I don't like to just consume the negative and the negative and the negative. I more like to see how the sausage is made.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
And learn about that and learn how, there's a book, I can't think of what it was, but Dan Sullivan always talked about it, and it was like written about just how much better times are now than they were in the 60s, and how much fewer, like how much less violence there is, and how much fewer, homicides and things, but nobody thinks that because they can see every one that happens now.
Yeah.
Whereas back then you didn't know.
True.
And so I can't think of the name of the book, but that's the part that I look at. I'm like, okay, just because there was a tsunami in wherever and 10 people died, it's tragic.
Yes.
We would have never known about that 40 years ago.
It's true.
So I'm not going to get consumed by it. I feel badly.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that is a little bit like, you can get a little too overwhelmed with all the bad stuff that's happening. And there's a lot of money in bad stuff. If you're,
I took a media course back in college and about mass media, and you've probably heard the saying, if it bleeds, it leads.
I haven't, but it makes sense.
If it bleeds, it leads. So if something bad happens, it leads the news station for that day.
Now, what did you get your degree in?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I went to a school to be a teacher, same as you.
We should shout out to Travis Mullenbrink from Spice Inc.
Who's that?
Who has sugar and saffron social.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
cayenne,
I'll have him on. Yeah.
He's also guy that got a degree in education.
Well, I didn't get my degree in education,
Okay.
so my original degree was supposed to be mathematics. So I went to my sophomore year in college, and I was supposed to be a math major with a like middle school teaching specialization, and I couldn't for the life of me get past calculus 2. So are you into math at all, or like okay? So I like math. And calculus 2 it's a different way to approach numbers. Calculus 1 was okay. I did okay in that one. But calculus 2 is like thinking of, I'm going to butcher it if I start to discriminate some math person comments in the podcast, but it's like thinking in math in 4D.
Got it.
Instead of 3D or 2D. And so I got like an 8% on calculus 2, my first test. I immediately went to my counselor and said, I'm dropping this class. I can't do it. And they said, if you can't pass Calc 2, you cannot be a math major. So
where was this?
This is in Monmouth College.
Okay.
So I knew right there it was written. So I went to my counselor, changed to communication and business.
Okay.
And started my journey there. But I didn't even know I wanted to be a businessman until far later in life. But it served me well in understanding economics. And, yeah. But teaching, I think, is still part of my nature. I love to teach. And
I do too, as long as it's not in Mr. Stanley's class with the door closed and desks in a row. Like, I mean, if you think about, like, I don't know if you have ADD, but I do. Very ADD, and it's like our education system is not set up for us because
it is not.
Closing the door, very few windows,
focusing for
sitting
45
in on
minutes.
a line, and one person talking, and some of them are interesting.
Yeah,
some of them aren't.
Yeah, I can get really pigeonholed into learning something for a long period
100%.
of time if I'm interested. But if I'm not interested, count me out within 5 minutes. I can't even sit there. I have a very hard time sitting still if that's the case. But I can focus. It just has to be interested to be. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But again, I didn't learn that until way later in life. Mm-hmm. So I used to think I was dumb, Bob, for a long time because I couldn't learn in the same way that other people could.
And I think per the education system, you were, or I was.
Yeah.
But in the whole scheme of things, I always tell people, if you have the gift of ADD, just wait until you get out of school and you will be like, oh my gosh, the world is so awesome.
It is.
And those that were uber smart and loved the classroom, they don't perform as well in things like we do.
Because life is unstructured.
Well, for us it is.
Well,
but life in general is. But I think, I mean, we've worked with enough engineers, and I'm sure you have, that their life is very structured.
Yeah, man, the engineer who asks the detailed questions about stuff, I'm not that guy for that sales sometimes. I'm just not the guy.
I had one.
I'm the guy for that guy's wife, though, probably.
Possibly.
To talk to, because she's probably
Therapist?
not the same. Yeah.
I had a guy who was willing to fly to New York to buy the perfect diamond. And we started talking, and I think 3 months later he bought from me because I allowed him to be my continuing education instructor.
Tell me what that means.
And he sent me article after article about the science of diamonds, and I did learn a lot more. Maybe in some ways more than I learned at the Gemological Institute of America. But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, I'm not wired like that.
No.
So
no, same.
I'm grateful there are people like
it.
that.
I respect it, yeah.
Because I'd like to fly, and you and I would not design the best airplane.
No. It'd be a fun one.
It would be a lot of fun.
Nick, my CFO, who is very much wired that way, not in an engineer standpoint, but fine details. So I just, whenever a contract gets sent over to me, I immediately forward it to him. I said, read it. Tell him what he'll read the contract. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to read it.
No.
But just tell me if it's good to sign or tell me what needs to be edited, but I'm not going to read it. I know that now.
Everybody needs someone like that.
Yeah. But he also needs me in his life to push the boundaries,
100%.
right? Because he would just stay
in his own little space. Yeah.
No, I think part of growing up and maturing is understanding yourself and understanding what you're good at, what you're bad at. But also, I think I don't envy a 23-year-old anymore. I guess some people are like, man, I wish I could go back to that time. I hated that, Bob, of like not knowing what the heck I'm going to do with my life. You remember that? Maybe it's different because you had a family business. It was different
for me because when I went to work with my mom, I had a pretty good idea of whether I like it or not. This is what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I think that there are 23-year-olds that have a really good idea of what they want to do, mm-hmm. but I don't know that they really do.
Well, yeah,
I think they're convinced.
Sure,
this is what I'm going to do.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, it's like you get into kind of like me with teaching, or I don't know if you ever taught, but it was like, ooh, this is not what I want to do. And at the end of the day, you find it or it finds you.
I love to teach, but also dealing with students and dealing with like the game plans and lesson plans. I've taught in seminars before of like teaching things. One of the things that I really don't like about that is people will be really excited during the lesson. They'll ask good questions, but then they have no application. And as a visionary, like I like to just do stuff. I like to just put my foot in something and actually.
Well, and a lot of times when I think things are presented, I'm voracious note taker, but I never go back and read the notes. So it's like, unless it's something that really stands out that I need to actually do, and I write down, do this, or I send myself an email that says, do this, it's just, so I think when you present and teach like you do, you want to leave one or two things that are memorable.
Yeah, you must do
that. That someone can go back to and say, you know what, these, of the 45 minutes to an hour, he said that these are the two things. Go to this website, do this, and your life will change.
Okay.
That doesn't happen in regular schools. You've got all kinds of other stuff. So.
I taught a class back in Bradley. It was one class back in branding and sales and marketing, and I was talking to a class of maybe 18, 20 students, and it just seemed like they were asleep. Maybe that's just, college, it was 9 a.m. course or something, but I was probably the same way when I was back at school. But I'm like, I want to give these kids something to take away where they can apply it. And I feel like there's maybe 1 or 2 students that took it seriously, and the rest of them were just like, get this guy out of the class. And
it's not your problem.
No.
But I will say that there are certain things that you can connect with anybody in that class on. It's just a matter of a lot of times delivery.
Yeah.
And how relevant is it to them today? Like I did a presentation for Bennett's 8th grade class kind of about gratitude and what matters most in this True Wealth quadrant. And one of the kids who was like Eddie Haskell from Leave It to the Beaver, or, just the smartass and the Spicoli type kid. He was one of those that's like totally checked out, not paying any attention. I don't know if it was confirmation mass or graduation. And his parents turned around and was like, I don't know what you presented, but our son was really taken by that. And I'm like, so sometimes they might not be appearing to take it in.
Yeah.
And they might soak it in and it might change your life for good. So
I find the same thing about social media, which I know you're not on as much as I am in terms of interacting and maybe you are with Bears talk and football.
Certain things.
But there's something called the invisible viewer, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where they view your stuff.
100%.
They never comment. They never interact. But then you'll see that person in public months later and they'll be like, oh, I've been following your stuff. And I'm like, I've never once seen you comment, message me anything, but they're watching you intently, like watching you bird's eye view. That's so fat. I do the same thing, right? But when it happens to you, it's like it takes you back a little bit because you're actually making an impact without hearing about it.
I would say 100%, and I've had the same thing. I don't even know what the book is, but I post from it most days. I've committed to I'm doing it every day so that everybody gets the whole book. They could easily just go order the book and read it every day, but people are like, "Well, I
want you to say it.
Those sheets that you put up there. What book is that from?" And I'm like, "I've shared that 50 times." But in the whole scheme of things, I think people are just busy.
Yeah.
I think they skim things.
With the bite size.
And you never know what's going to hit them. And at some point, they're going to run into you and be like, that changed my life.
Yeah.
Or I want to know more about that. You're like, who are you?
The funny thing is I think we get caught in our own mind of what we intake, what knowledge we have, what we focus on becomes our life. But let's say you're talking about something specific, like bowling. Okay, let's say you took 6 hours of learning to learn about bowling and all the specific things. 99% of the public knows nothing about what you're saying. But if you say a specific thing about a hole and how it's measured on the grip of a bowling ball, that comes inherent knowledge to you. So it's in your brain, you know a thing about all the stuff. But if somebody finds that one thing as just a bystander watching you say that thing, it's mind-blowing to them because they know nothing about it.
Yeah.
In the same way that you know about all these things about gemstones and all these things about watches that I don't know about. If you just say one little small tidbit, that's inherent to you, but it's not inherent to everybody you're speaking to.
Yeah. And I would say my big thing, I'm more interested in gratitude and how that part of your brain and that muscle can be developed and can actually like
Speak to that.
switch people from being depressed to not being depressed. And it's I mean, there's Harvard Business Reviews written about it, and this has been hot for probably 4 or 5 years, but you can actually create a daily gratitude practice that can change your life, your perspective on life, and the way you
Rewires your brain.
rewires your brain. And it's very possible to do it. You just have to do it. So that's where my jam is. And
Every one of your emails that I've sent you says with gratitude, I think is how you end there.
and I type that every time.
Every time.
Like it's not in my signature. I type it for the reason of that's a part of rewiring your brain. If everything you share is with gratitude and you consciously type it, it rewires your brain to look at positives, negatives, anything with gratitude, because that's what you're wiring your brain to see.
Yeah. Are you familiar with The Onion? It's the satirical news site. But it said one of their blurbs they put out this last week was people living in the best time in human history complain about how hard it is, or something along those lines, which is very true. We're served so much negative news now about, you name it, Israel and Gaza, Russia, Ukraine, the United States, all the stuff that's happening in the world. We can get caught in that mindset of thinking that everything is bad, where you have a big screen TV and air conditioning, which didn't exist just a few years ago.
But it's so much hotter. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, I mean, we lead every day at the store with a huddle, and we always share what is our energy on a scale of 0 to 10. And I always say my 10 energy might be somebody's like 15 because I have a lot of energy. And then so energy, focus on a scale of 0 to 10. My 10 focus could be somebody's 5 because I'm all over the place. And then one thing you're grateful for. And what I learned during COVID was...
Why do you do that?
So if you're driving into work and you know that you are going to have to share publicly what your energy and focus is for the day, is the brain going to elevate it or lower it on your way into work? It's proven, neuroscience will prove that anything you focus on increases. And so your energy and focus increase because you know you're going to have to share it publicly. Now, we've had people that are like 4/4s, and it's like, are you depressed or do you need to go to the doctor? Yeah, I probably shouldn't be here today. Like, so, if people are being honest, you can tell when they're sick. But then, like, that piece wires the brain to be more energized and focused coming into work. The gratitude piece allows people to start focusing on what they're grateful for coming into work, which creates a better mindset coming into work. The other piece is, and this is what I came to the conclusion of through a mentor of mine, shout out to Ron Nakamoto, is that if you ask and find out what someone's grateful for over a long period of time, you know what matters most to them. So I can go through everybody in our store and tell you what is most important to them, whether it's family, whether it's the environment, whether it's their dog, whether it's money, whatever it is. It becomes consistent, and it allows you to function on a higher level, at a higher plane, with the people that matter most to you.
More awareness
people
for
you
your
work
employees.
with, on a regular basis. And everybody's aware of it.
Good point. Not just you.
Yeah, and so
They
that's...
hold each other accountable.
And you can do it in 5 minutes.
That's good.
E, F, and G. Like, what's your energy, focus, and gratitude? Tell me what it is right now. Come on, Ben.
Oh, mine?
Yeah.
My energy is pretty high. Yeah, I'm very excited for 2025. I've got a lot of ambition.
So on a scale of 0 to 10.
0 to 10, I'd say energy right now, I'd say an 8.
8, and what's your focus right now?
Focus, I'd say, is around an 8 as well.
And then one thing you're grateful for.
Man, I'm so grateful for my wife.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you're an 8 and grateful for your wife.
Yeah, I am.
And if you have 20 people in a room and everybody's programmed to understand it, they can be like 8, I'm grateful for my wife. 10, I'm grateful for my dog.
What about
10.
you? What are you right now?
I am a 10.
10.
And I'm also grateful for 2025. I'm grateful to be sitting here.
Yeah.
And I'm most grateful today that the Chicago Bears beat the Green Bay Packers and that we can, like, even though we only won 5 games this year, like, the last game matters, especially against the Packers. And it's like, for 9 months, I can relish the fact that we've won more games.
Did the Packers have something to lose yesterday by losing that game?
At the end of the day, no. But going into the game, yes.
Okay.
It was the...
Because Detroit and Minnesota.
No, it was Washington,
Dallas.
And them. Washington, them, and somebody else for the wild card.
St. Louis.
It was
LA Rams?
Washington and them because Minnesota or Detroit, whoever lost was going to be the 5th seed.
Got it.
So it was basically, were you going to be the 6th or 7th seed? So they're the 7th seed, and they get to play the Eagles this week. Not good. So, but yeah, I'm a huge Bears fan. If you're checking my algorithm, that would be
most of it.
It'd be like Chicago Bears, Bitcoin, gratitude. There's an ADHD meme site that is just so wonderful because you read it and you're like, yeah, that's me. Yeah. So,
do you listen to songs on repeat when you find a good one? Okay, maybe that's an ADHD thing. But for a long time, Bob, I thought that I was just maybe broken or something. If I find a song that I like, I play on repeat for the next 3-4 weeks. I mean, literally.
That's the only song you listen to?
Only song.
Wow.
You just continue to repeat the song. It's an ADHD thing where what happens is you get dopamine from that song because it's so good. So you just continue to exhaust the dopamine. And then once the dopamine runs out on that song, you transition to a new one.
Maybe I should try.
Yeah. I don't know if you do that, but if you find a focus in something, do you just go with it for like,
just in it. Yeah.
You're in it, right? And then once it kind of runs out a little bit, you find something else.
Yeah. Which is not good for like long-term investing.
No.
Because I've always been like, you need to have a balanced portfolio. And it's like, but if you think Caterpillar is the one company that's going to succeed, why wouldn't I put 100% in Caterpillar?
Do it all.
It's so illogical.
Yes.
So I would not have been a financial advisor. No. I almost became one, but it wouldn't have been good.
You've been good at the people part.
100%.
But maybe you lose them some money.
I don't. Yeah. No. All in. 100%.
We need people like that in our life that think the same way because it reinvigorates you that, yeah, it's okay to be that way.
Let's go.
It's okay.
Where?
Let's go.
I don't know.
Where we're going.
We're going to get there, though.
Yeah, well, one thing I really respect about you, Bob, is every time that I've come to you and asked you questions, I wrote this in a card, and it's really true. You've been in business for a long time, and I've been in business for a few years, but you didn't treat me like a little child when I came to you and asked you for advice. And I really respect that about you because it's really easy when, especially younger people, are starting new things, and there's a pedestal that I place you on, and the other business owners in the area that you're connected to. That I'm a new guy starting out, but you never treated me like that, and so I appreciate that.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity because I don't consider myself knowing a whole lot. So
yeah,
somebody comes to me, I'm like, wow, okay, I might know something. I might know something. Might know something. Yes, no, that's cool. Yeah. Well, I find that asking questions is a true form of intelligence. Mm. And so if you run into somebody who is running a business or starting a business or young, and they just want to tell you everything they do, that's a really good sign that they're not going to make it. When my dad died, the owner of the Metro Center, Marv Goodman, my dad's best friend, Jim Conrad, and I think maybe her attorney or whatever, but basically somebody told her, like, you need to surround yourself with really smart people that you can ask them anything at any time and they'll give you a solid answer. And always find people that are more successful than you and more of an expert in that arena. And I just learned, like, hey, just ask questions. And if you have the right people, and then all of a sudden they've proven themselves to be way smarter than you, to the point of your CFO or whatever, like, give him the contract. If he tells you to sign it, you don't even have to read it. Like, when people prove to me that they're trustworthy, I can delegate that to them, and they just tell me, do this, and it's like, okay, done. Yep. Now what?
Yep.
Done.
What's
okay,
next?
that took 3 minutes. As opposed to thinking that you can't trust anybody, you know more than everybody. That's a very...
dangerous.
Well, it's dangerous, and you don't get anything done.
No.
So...
the humility goes a long way.
Yeah, for sure. So congrats on being a good question asker and willingness to try stuff like this. This is really cool.
Isn't it cool?
Yeah.
Yeah, I find, Bob, that I didn't know anything about podcasting 90 days ago at all. I knew a little bit just because I had a very basic podcast a few years back, but I ran it for 3-4 episodes and stopped. But I found a connect in the roofing industry who all he does is build podcast studios. And so it's all he does is build studios, and it's becoming a huge thing because obviously TikTok and Instagram, YouTube, it's how you create content. And if I film with you for an hour and a half or 2 hours, and we can get a bunch of solid clips that I can produce to the public that would otherwise.
You mean this isn't live?
No, thankfully. But this is all he does. It's a growing industry, And Joe Rogan kind of started this whole new trend of new media, right? And even if I get 1 or 2 or 10 viewers who see this and can capture something from it, invisible or visible, it makes an impact. If you do that times 50 or 100, all of a sudden you become a source of good content for the area or whatever I'm doing. So I'm excited for this podcast studio for myself to learn things. Mm-hmm. All these things you've already told me, I'm banking. So I know that artificial rubies can now be made. So maybe I'm going to go buy one.
You can. They're not expensive. And then people will come in with a ring. Oh, this was my grandma. She got it in the late 1800s. I'm like, yeah, it was synthetic. They had synthetic rubies in the late 1800s. Wow. So, yeah, I think I've listened to one podcast about my friend who's got a restaurant, the Red Drum in Charleston or Mount Pleasant, South Carolina.
Okay.
And it's the shrimp tank.
That's right. Yeah. No, I checked it out. You sent it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was mowing. So I was consuming a podcast. But I have another friend who's creating a podcast on gratitude and grief. So he lost his wife tragically. And, he's a single father of 2 young boys and knows that I'm kind of the gratitude guy. And we're good friends. And he's like, I'd like you to be the person who asks the questions for the first season. And I'm like, well, that's cool. I'm like, I don't know anything about podcasts, but let me be the guy who leads it. And he's like, that's probably why it'll be good. And you'll be willing to ask me the questions that are the hard ones that not a lot of people would pick the scab and then push harder.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. I think we're going to do it in the next couple of weeks. And this gives me an idea of like exactly what the heck I'm doing.
Yes. Let's go to, speaking of family and that person's wife and your wife, you perceivably have a good marriage with your wife. And what are some of the keys that you found out over the past, you've been married for a couple decades, I presume?
25 years.
25 years.
This year.
What's something that you've taken away in the last 25 years with your wife?
I would say you have to find someone who's willing to accept you and your path in life and embrace it and be okay with it and allow you to be you. Because I find that if Ben was not allowed to be Ben or Ben was not allowed to be the roof tiger, that would be stressful. Like coming home and being like, honey, we've got this thing with work.
Yeah.
I'm going to be home like at 8:00. Why are you always going? So, and Mia actually worked at the store before we were married. So I met her at a Catholic youth retreat program, Teens Encounter Christ. We were adult leaders and, came in, she worked at the store, and then we started dating and proceeded to get married and have been for 25 years. But I think it helped her working in the business and understanding what the business was.
Sure.
And then she's a middle child, so she's very, like, Switzerland, like, willing to go along with anything because as a middle child, that's kind of what you do.
Oh, as a middle child as well,
yeah. Yeah, and then maybe that's entrepreneurs should marry middle children because
I've heard middle children are like, are either awesome in the middle because they can negotiate and talk on both sides, or they're like criminals. Have you heard that?
Luckily, I haven't met one. That's a criminal.
But middle child, like, statistically, like
that's interesting.
Mass murderers are middle children.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I won't tell my wife. So back to what makes a good marriage. I just think freedom. You allow her, and the other piece is recognizing that, like, when you have children. I mean, I remember when Bennett was born, and my friends that were like really into golfing were like, dude, are you going to golf? And I'm like, dude, 4 hours is like a percentage in his life. So I remember, I think it was with him. So she was nursing. She would pump. So I would take 10:00 p.m. and 6:00 a.m. She would take the 2:00 a.m. feeding. So I knew that she could take a nap before going to bed or get shit done or just be by herself. And then I knew that I could sleep through the night to go to work.
Right.
And then she knew that she could sleep in past 7 or 8 o'clock before I left for work. And so it's that you have to be willing to step in and do what some would say is her job, which is, no, it's your job because it's your child and her child, and partnering and truly being that partnership, like emptying the dishwasher,
Yeah.
cooking, taking the kids off, so that she, I think going on trips or evenings out with their friends, like girls' night out, guys' night out, whatever. But then also going on trips together,
right?
Whether it's just a night to get away, it's work. I mean, I grew up. My dad passed away when I was 16. I was in counseling, very quickly after that. My uncle always said that, Michael Jordan's best basketball player that ever lived. I don't think that's debatable. Some people like to debate it, but I don't think it's debatable. He goes, he's got a coach. He's got a defensive coach, an offensive coach, a shooting coach, a strength and conditioning coach, a personal trainer, likely a counselor of some kind. He's got 10 different effective counselors, and he's the best in the world. Why do you think you not need counseling? Why do you not think that the most important muscle in your body doesn't need some work? So, we've always, in some way, shape, or form, been connected to a counselor. Our kids have always been in connection with, a guy that I worked out with, my brain, Ryan, Shane Young, he does neurotherapy over on Woollen Knolls. And he was a cop that became a neurotherapist through Bradley, and Harry Chapin Russell was his mentor. She passed away, neat lady, but it's basically like rewiring your brain. So like for people that are ADHD or concussions or depressed or whatever, like you can do a brain map and actually rewire a brain to turn the red and orange spots that are dangerous green and functioning. And so just being open to pouring into different ways of helping your brain, helping your spouse's brain, making sure that you support each other, because it's not easy.
No.
It's just not.
No.
It's easy making commercials with her because she's really good on TV and, makes me look good. But, being married to me, being married to you, we're nuts, realistically. And so, having the patience with them that they have with us and recognizing that sometimes we're a lot to handle.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I love my wife. I mean that. And she does accept me for who I am, and she's so patient. Gosh, she's so patient with like our kids and our life and what we do. It just seems like you can't throw her anything that she can't take.
Well, she was a nurse.
Yeah,
so.
She's a nurse. And that's just one thing that you can't teach, that I so respect, because I'm very impatient when it comes to certain things. I'm patient in a lot of different ways, but I'm impatient when it comes to certain things. And she's just so beautiful in that way. And so, taking time to invest in your marriage is really valuable.
100%. And investing.
Necessary.
Like, how many kids you have?
3.
3. Yeah, I have 3. It's a lot. You go through a phase. How old are your kids?
9, 8, and 6 months.
Yeah. So you're in the throngs of it. And then in 22 years and 6 months, you'll be like, now what? And that's the phase we're getting to. It's like, for 20 years, it's been
good point.
Swimming, basketball, soccer, cheerleading,
chauffeur.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, not who are you, Mia, but who are we?
Who are we?
Like, this was a defining piece of everything we did. Mm-hmm. And now we have to figure out other stuff to do. So
since I have a gap in 9, 8, and 6 months, we're going to have that a little bit delayed. And we plan to have more kids. And so we're going to see the two off when they graduate and go off to their lives. And the youngest one's going to be 10 years old, 9 years old. So it'll be an interesting...
It'll be great.
Yeah. Somebody told me that this last week, they said, you're going to have an interesting passage when it comes to that. So if we have more kids, then we'll have that even more delayed.
And I would imagine your 10-year-old at the time, 10 years from now, will be a draw for your other 2 to likely want to stay near and not, go work in Thailand or something. So, that's the other piece. Like my kids, Bennett lives here, works at the store. Charlie's at ISU, and conversations like Peoria. Yeah, it gets a bad rap from people that grew up here, but the one thing that they're starting to realize is try getting a job right after college and making a living in Nashville.
Yeah,
ultra competitive. When a dump costs $500,000.
Exactly.
Like, my house isn't $500,000.
No.
I don't know if yours is.
No.
But
pretty nice house here for
you can find pretty nice houses here for $100,000 to $200,000 that are very functional and affordable coming out of college.
Yeah, that's one of the focuses of this podcast, Bob. Is really like bringing cool things, accentuating the fun things and the good things happening in Peoria. Because all too often we get a bad rap here.
100%.
It used to be if it plays in Peoria, Caterpillar, all this stuff, and then once those things come away, it just seems like all we hear about is if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah,
all we hear about.
But Illinois is this and this.
Yes.
And that, at the same time, just sheer economics. Mm-hmm. Like, why are people that work virtually buying houses in Peoria? Because they're affordable.
Affordable.
And we have, a symphony. We have plays. We have concerts. We have
that's right.
A basketball team that is relevant in the NCAA. We have a hockey team that's done well. We've got minor league baseball. We're 2.5 hours from Chicago and 3 hours from St. Louis, 3 hours from Indy, and the river's really pretty.
Yeah.
And the restaurants are pretty good.
And the restaurants are pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
speaking of which, what's your go-to for restaurants here in Peoria?
We go out to eat a lot with our kids. So there's a lot of the Braskies, Weavers, Khaki Jacks, Avantis, Agatushi's. Tony Agatushi's my wife's cousin.
I got to have him on the pod, man.
Tony?
Yeah. Can you connect me?
I'll talk to him.
Yeah. I don't know if he's in this kind of stuff, but I'm such a respecter of... I'm a respecter of old things, man. Of old things.
Yeah,
because they've seen businesses go through cycles. You and I are talking about. We've been in business for this is our 5th year. You've been in business for a long time, but seeing the cycles of things play out and not be so scared,
Oh yeah,
because every year it seems to be doomsday, or you have to change or do all these things. Yeah. And so they've seen cycles for decades, man, and they can speak to it. And they have the same bartender. Is Tony the bartender?
So Tony makes the pizzas. His cousin Danny's the bartender.
Danny.
So Tony's dad was Jim.
Okay.
So my wife's uncle, he was the pizza maker, and Jerry was the guy behind the bar and the guy that made sure you got a table. So the first time I took Mia there, and I've known Jerry because my mom was a lifeguard where Jerry and his wife got married.
Okay.
So we've known Jerry a long time, since I was a little kid, and I took Mia there, and Jerry came up and he says, Bobby, you take care of Mia or we'll take care of you, and walked away. And I was like, Mia, he was serious. And she goes, oh, yeah, that's Uncle Jerry. And I'm like, I've known him all my life.
Wow.
But yeah, no, really cool. Their story is epic.
It is tremendous. The respect, like they truly treat you like your family when you walk in.
Yeah.
The first time I went there, I was like, I feel like this is my uncle. And I love their pizza and their tiger sauce. And
you know why it's called tiger sauce?
It's named after Roof Tiger, right?
No, it's not. They went to Pete Pasquale because they had their oil and vinegar that everybody liked.
Pete Pasquale.
He owned Pasquale, the food company, Geo Pasquale.
I'm not familiar.
It was down on probably Adams.
Okay.
Industrial food service.
Okay.
Like everything from packets to slicing machines and all that. But they went down and they needed some inexpensive bottles. And there was a restaurant that had something Tiger and had gone out of business. And so Pete's like, we've got all these bottles that they never paid for or picked up. You can have them for next to nothing. So they put their sauce, and it was a big tiger on it. So people started calling it tiger sauce.
They don't have tiger sauce on it anymore.
No.
I'm sorry, they don't have the tiger logo. It's just
but
a blank bottle.
That's why it started getting called tiger sauce. You can actually order what is tiger sauce, not Agatushi's tiger sauce. There is a tiger sauce on Amazon that Trust Me Tavern on 29 serves on their wings. It is a sweet and spicy sauce. I'll order you some because you should
I've seen
have
the
it.
hot sauce.
Yes,
yeah,
it's
I've
a
seen
sweet
it.
and spicy.
It's got a big tiger logo on it. Yeah,
so good.
Okay.
And if you ever want interesting, like Trust Me Tavern on 29, they wings in tiger sauce. Like you should do.
Trust Me Tavern.
You should have a order of wings from Trust Me Tavern. Just lathered up in tiger sauce for one of your podcasts and just eat tiger sauce wings.
I've got a couple people lined up in the podcast who own restaurants that are going to come on, and I want to have them bring their product, and I'm going to try it, eat it on camera, and we'll try it together.
Yeah, I don't know who owns Trust Me Tavern, but it's a true
Isn't there a Trust Me 2?
I don't know.
Where's Trust Me Tavern?
Trust Me Tavern's in Mossville. Like if you go down 29 and you hit, or if you go down Route 6 and hit 29 and take a right, and there's a little ice cream stand and the fried chicken place, it's right there.
We did their roof.
Okay.
We did their roof. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. The tiger sauce tomato Tucci's isn't it just oil and vinegar? It's like
oil and vinegar.
Oil and vinegar. Okay. And on pizza, it's phenomenal. But I like thin crust pizza.
My family, my two boys and I eat ketchup on Agatucci's pizza.
What?
And Uncle Jim came out one time and he goes, I've been making pizzas here for over 50 years and you're the first people I've ever seen put ketchup on my pizza. So, hey,
is it a tomato base?
The Woolseys are trendsetters. We put ketchup on Agatucci's pizza.
Yeah.
It's good.
I feel like that place hasn't changed in 50 years, and I never want them to.
No.
When you walk in there, it feels like the exact same as what it used to be back in 85.
Yep. Just no jukebox.
Okay. I sit at the bar every time I go there and just talk to the bartender and just chop it up. Yeah. Because they have kids in college now, and they're talking about, I think last time I remember, this is a while back, but I think they have a daughter who plays lacrosse for like some Ivy League school. Are you familiar? No? Mm-mm. It's an Ivy League school, and she plays lacrosse for it. I think it may be Harvard or something, but it's very prominent.
Interesting.
Yeah. She's a very good lacrosse player. But I want to have Agatucci's on because I feel like that's just such a...
You should have Danny and Tony.
Both same time?
Yeah, they're cousins.
Okay.
They run the place. It's always been like Jim and Jerry and Danny and Tony.
Okay. The one at the bar, his name is?
The one who wears the mask at the bar is Danny.
Danny.
Yeah.
Okay, and Tony's in the back.
Correct. Making pizza.
Does he still wear a mask?
Yes.
Okay.
I think he has
some kind of respiratory
medical condition.
I see.
I don't know if it's type 1 diabetes or something like that. That is just something that he doesn't mess with.
Protects. Yeah, makes sense.
And the only reason I say that's because the guy behind the bar, that's pretty easy to... There's usually 2 or 3 guys behind the bar. So...
I always look at the roof every time I drive by because they have like it's a synthetic or some kind of slate or I don't know what it is, but it's either painted or they had it done in the past couple of years or something, but it's a very specific shingle that they've used on their roof. Something you don't look at, but if they need roof help, I can help them.
I think there was a car accident and the police drove into coming right by the tattoo place and pinned Uncle Jim between the wall and the car and the bar. So they were actually shut down for a significant period of time.
Like physically pinned with the car?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, jeez.
And so he was like, I'm like, so what is business interruption insurance like? He's like, it's like really good. He's like, you get paid,
shut it down.
You get paid everything that you would get paid without doing any work until you can open back up. And I was like, I always wondered how that worked. So
interesting.
Yeah.
I'm excited to have. There's a guy that I've talked to a lot. He just opened up a restaurant this last year. He runs the Wolf Den Pizzeria, I think, downtown.
Okay.
Jack's on Main as well. Yeah.
I was just there on Saturday night.
Did you enjoy it? Their pizza's
interviewing
good,
Jack?
I think so.
They have the largest Caesar salad that I've ever. It says the casino salad, and it's the biggest metal bowl.
Okay.
I didn't have to eat anything that I would have regretted.
And just
it was very
big
good
old Caesar
until I got
salad.
home and then I had a bunch of ice cream. Cheez-Its. That's another story.
I love it. Well, yeah, Bob, I really appreciate you coming on.
Glad to be here.
Anything you want to leave? What's your last thing? Let me ask you one more question. It's 2025, January, what is it, 4th or 5th today?
6th. My sister.
Don't have the date on this one.
My sister had her birthday yesterday.
January
which is
6th.
The 5th.
Happy
so
birthday.
The 6th.
2025, Jones Brothers has been in business since 1939.
Mm-hmm.
What does the next 5 years look like with Jones Brothers? What are you working on? What's your long-term vision?
So the cool thing is we just hired a young lady who moved here from Des Moines, Iowa. Her name is Morgan.
Okay.
And she is our new sales director. And she is a graduate gemologist. She loves design, and she loves that social media world that, she loves to post interesting things. So I'm excited that the 85 years we've been in business now will be shared interestingly via social media. For that, I'm excited for the EOS journey that we're on. We have our annual 2-day that I get to lead next Monday, so a week from today. So we will set our course for our next 3 years, 10 years, 1 year, 90 days. So if you asked me this question in a week, I'd have some more
concrete
answers. I'm excited because we have with Morgan on our leadership team, my son, and then Beth, who's been with us for a long time. I'm just excited to see what they come up with as a...
Younger people.
Yeah, and a couple of the companies that I've been the EOS implementer for, when you think about your 10-year targets, a lot of times it's revenue and employees and customers and how many locations and how many services. And one of the organizations I worked with wanted to assist their clients in donating $100 million to charity in the next 10 years, which totally changed my perspective on a 10-year target. It was like, I'm excited to see what more we can do at Jones Brothers from not just a sales target or, revenue target or, gross profit or, all the KPIs, but actually like some stuff that really moves the world.
What's your impact?
Because that to me is at this age way more interesting.
I bet.
And we're in a position to do it. So, which is cool.
You can only get so excited about money in the basic
unless
sense
that's
of
what you're driven by.
Sure. And even then, it's like making money for just making money's sake is not really fun. But
we used to be in the funeral business, and
Yes.
my uncle said he never.
You literally used to be in the funeral
My
business?
family did, yeah, the Woolsey Funeral Home.
Wow.
So my uncle partnered with the Wilton family and has Woolsey Wilton, which is on Will and Olds.
Yeah.
But we weren't a part of that. That was my uncle. So I think he sold in the late 80s, early 90s. But the thing that he always said was, I never sold a casket that we sewed extra pockets in to put their stuff. And he said, and I never drove a hearse that had a trailer behind it with their things and their extra money and their stuff. So he said, when you get to the end, you don't take any of that stuff with you. So make sure that what you do, you're able to nurture and bless others with, as opposed to just focusing on building it for yourself. And I think that's very relevant to, how I look at business and impact. And if you're focused on the really right stuff, the rest of it takes care of itself.
Sure. That is so prevalent now. I think now more than ever, people are talking about money as in everything. But why is it so difficult to live that way when that's the understanding? I feel like people get caught up, especially in the business conferences that I've been a part of. It's all about gross profit, gross revenue. How do you grow this, grow these targets? But it's so hard it's like once you obtain some level of success, your mindset quickly turns into the opposite. It quickly turns into how much of a bigger impact can I have? Where if you haven't had some other level of success, you're fighting to that first point.
Agreed. And I also think you have to have a certain level of success in order to be that generous. You can't just give everything away from the get-go.
It's an outflow, it's an overpouring.
Yeah, and I think, I'm a huge Bears fan. The Bears won 24-22. There is a score that's kept. How big is your company? How many employees do you have? How many roofs did you put on?
Yep.
How many podcasts? There has to be a level of competition, and that's not where I am right now with the store. I'm more at I'm 51 and feel pretty successful, and that's for the people that want to chase that at the store and do whatever, and that's important. But I'm just excited to see what other stuff, because that other stuff brings revenue. Like it or not. If you come up with something that's really engaging and creative and a fun game to play, a lot of times it pays off. So, this podcast, you'll probably sell a roof because of it.
Yeah.
And that's not the goal.
It's not the goal.
But it's cool to be able to do this stuff.
Yes.
And, oh, by the way, hey, yeah, I heard Bob on the
pod.
What is the name of the podcast? The Tiger
Tiger
Den.
Den. Come on, Bob.
I didn't know that. I'm looking at this screen, not that.
Yeah.
No, but that's the stuff that's the fun stuff. Because then it's like, that's not why you do it, but there can be a fun, positive impact on the other side of it. So.
Love it. Bob, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Bob Woolsey, Jones Brothers Jewelers.
Give it a shot.
Jones Brothers Jewelers.
That was good.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, it was low key.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, buddy.
Appreciate you.
Thanks, Bob.